I wasn't even supposed to be in town that summer. Originally, the plan was for me to spend most of July in Seattle with my cousin, but a last-minute issue, my cousin breaking her ankle during a hiking trip, meant I was stuck back in Tigard, Oregon, bored out of my mind. My parents worked full-time, and most of my friends were either away at summer camps or busy with their own plans. I had just turned 16 a few months earlier, and this was shaping up to be one of the dullest summers of my life. Our neighborhood was a quiet, mostly residential place just outside Portland. We'd lived there since I was 6, so I knew most of the faces on our street. Families, older couples, some retirees. One of those families lived 3 houses down. The Clarks, Sam and Dana Clark, and their 7-year-old son, Leo. I didn't know Leo well. I was too old to be part of his world, but I saw him riding his scooter around or chasing bubbles in the yard sometimes. The Clarks were friendly, typical suburban couple, both in their mid-30s, polite but not overly chatty. We exchanged waves and small talk occasionally. It was on a Tuesday morning that Dana showed up at our doorstep. I was still in my pajamas making cereal when she rang the bell. "Hey, Rachel," she smiled, a little rushed. "I know this is really last minute, but Sam and I both have to head into Portland today. Our sitter canceled. Any chance you'd be up for watching Leo? Just for a few hours, maybe until 2 or 3. I blinked. I had literally never babysat before. "I've never really..." "We'll pay you $60, she said quickly. "Leo's super chill. He just likes cartoons and his Switch. Honestly, it's more like being in the house with him than actual work. That kind of money for just hanging out?" I agreed, mostly because I had nothing else going on. She gave me a few quick details. Snacks in the fridge, emergency numbers on the counter. Leo didn't have any allergies, and he was allowed 1 hour of video games, and then outside time. By 9:30 a.m., I was standing in their living room while Dana and Sam headed out. Leo was on the floor building a Lego tower and looked up at me with a tiny, uncertain smile. "You want to play?" he asked. I smiled. "Sure." The first couple of hours went by pretty peacefully. We played with his Legos, then Mario Kart on his Switch, and then I made him a peanut butter and jelly sandwich with some grapes and crackers for lunch. He was a polite kid, talkative but not annoying. After lunch, he wanted to go outside, so we went into the backyard. I brought out a book to read on the patio while he kicked a soccer ball around. It was around 1 p.m. when it happened. I heard the ding-dong of the front doorbell. Leo stopped mid-kick. I looked at him. He looked back at me. "Expecting anyone?" I joked, but I stood up anyway. He shook his head. "No." We went back into the house together. I didn't open the door right away. Our parents drilled that into me. I checked through the small vertical window on the side of the door. A man stood there, mid to late 30s, tall, maybe 6 feet 1 inch. He had a beanie on despite the warm weather, and was wearing an old hoodie and gray sweatpants. Something about him immediately felt off. Not dangerous, just out of place. He didn't belong in this neighborhood. He rang the doorbell again, then took a step back, shoving his hands in his pockets. "Do you know him?" I asked Leo quietly. Leo stood on his tiptoes to look through the side window. "No," he said, but his voice had a tiny edge to it. "He came here before. Last week." I stiffened. "What do you mean?" "I was playing outside," he whispered. "He parked in the street and came up to the house. I didn't open the door. He just stood there, then left." I felt my heart beat a little harder. I made sure the door was locked and cracked it open slightly, keeping the screen door shut. "Hi, can I help you?" I asked, trying to sound casual. The man blinked as if surprised to see me. Hey, yeah, I'm with a flooring company. We're doing free inspections in the area, checking for water damage. Just takes a few minutes." I hesitated. "This isn't my house," I said. "I'm just babysitting." "Right," he said, then added quickly, "I'm not selling anything, it's free. I just go room to room, check moisture levels. It's for an ad campaign we're running. People who qualify can get a discount." Something about his tone was practiced, like a script. "No thanks," I said. "We're not interested." He smiled, nodded, but lingered a second too long. Then he gave a wave and walked off the porch. I watched him walk to a beat-up silver Nissan parked at the curb. He didn't drive off, just sat in the driver's seat, hands on the steering wheel. Leo came up beside me. "He's doing the same thing," he whispered. That was enough for me. I closed the door, locked it again, and pulled the curtains shut. I didn't want to scare Leo, but I was unsettled. I texted my mom and Dana Clark to let them know about the guy. Dana replied a few minutes later. "We don't have any floor inspection scheduled. Call me if he comes back, thank you." Still, the guy didn't leave. From the kitchen window I could see his car, engine off. He wasn't on his phone. He wasn't writing anything down, just sitting. My stomach twisted. I didn't want to make a big deal out of nothing, but something didn't feel right. I pulled the house phone off the wall and kept it nearby just in case. Leo, sensing the shift in energy, sat closer to me while we resumed a cartoon on the couch. 15 minutes later, I checked again. He was gone. Or so I thought. When I looked out the side window facing the backyard, I saw him, this time standing by the wooden fence, on the side of the house. I nearly dropped the phone. He wasn't doing anything, just standing near the bushes like he belonged there. I moved quickly, pulled Leo away from the couch and whispered, "Let's go hang out in your room, okay?" He didn't ask questions, just nodded. Upstairs, I locked the door and pulled him over to the far corner away from the windows. Then I called 911. I kept it short, described the man, what he'd said, what he was doing, and gave the address. The dispatcher stayed on the line with me while Leo quietly fiddled with a small toy car in his lap. "You did the right thing," she told me. "An officer is a few blocks away." Minutes felt like hours. We didn't hear the doorbell again, but I heard the faint whoop of a police siren a little while later. I peeked out from the side of the bedroom blinds and saw the officer's car pulling up next to the curb. The man was gone. The officer knocked, and I opened the door after confirming his badge through the peephole. I gave him the full rundown. He took a look around the yard, then around the fence where I last saw the guy. There were footprints in the dirt. The cops said they'd keep an eye out, and if I saw the man again, I should call immediately. Dana and Sam got back an hour later. I filled them in. They were disturbed, but also thankful I acted quickly. Dana hugged me and said I had a good instinct. I got my $60, but it felt less like payment and more like hush money for an afternoon that had veered way out of the ordinary. I didn't babysit again that summer, and I never saw the man again. But sometimes when I'm walking home or sitting alone in a house, I think about how casual he was, how normal he tried to seem, how easily people like that blend into the background waiting for an opening. He didn't break in. He didn't try to force anything. He just watched, asked to come inside, and that was somehow worse. Because he didn't need to kick the door in to scare me, he just had to knock. I had mostly stopped babysitting by the time this happened. My name's Emily Carter, and for about a year and a half, I babysat for friends of my parents or people they trusted. I wasn't advertising or putting myself out there. It just kind of happened. Somebody would mention needing a sitter, and my mom would say, "Emily's good with kids." And I was. I liked the calm of it. Dinner, cartoons, bedtime stories, easy money, no drama. This took place in the summer of 2017. I had just turned 18, fresh out of high school, and was working part-time at a bookstore while waiting for community college to start in the fall. My days were quiet. Gym in the mornings, errands in the afternoons, hanging out with friends when I could. That day was nothing special. I'd just finished a workout still in my gym clothes, leggings, sneakers, a faded hoodie. On my way home, I stopped at PriceMart, a local grocery store in Brookdale, to grab some yogurt and fruit. I was halfway down the frozen section when a man walked up beside me. "Excuse me," he said, and I turned, a little startled. He was maybe mid-30s, average build, brown hair. He wore a flannel shirt under a utility vest and looked like he might have just come off a job site. "Are you Emily?" I blinked, surprised. "Yeah?" "I thought so. I'm friends with the Morgans. You used to babysit for them, right? Brian and Sherry?" "Oh, yeah, a few times. A couple years back, though." He smiled, polite but rushed. "I actually asked them recently if they knew anyone reliable. My regular sitter canceled last minute, and they gave me your name. I was just about to call when I saw you here. Funny how that works out." He laughed a little. I forced a smile, still processing. His tone was casual, but I was caught off guard. I'd never seen him before. "I'm Mark, by the way." He extended his hand. I shook it. He launched into the situation, said he had a 5-year-old son named Caleb, said he had a work function and was really in a bind. "It's just a couple hours," he explained. "He's super easy. Already had dinner. Just need someone to hang out with, maybe read him a story before bed. I'd be back by 11. I hesitated. I hadn't planned anything that night. I was tired, sure, but it wasn't like I had anything better to do. And the Morgans were good people. If they vouched for him, yeah, I guess that's fine," I said slowly. He looked genuinely relieved. "You're a lifesaver. I'll pay $50 an hour." My eyebrows lifted. That was way above average. He handed me a folded slip of paper with his address on it. 8 o'clock, he said. "Yeah." "Okay." I left the store with a weird knot in my stomach. Something about the whole thing felt too convenient. But I'd been approached in public by parents before. It wasn't that unusual. Besides, the pay was insane. I told my mom I picked up a last-minute babysitting gig and mentioned the Morgans. She remembered them but didn't think much of it. I texted 2 of my friends and joked about getting paid $50 an hour to play with a 5-year-old. We laughed about it. At 7:40, I headed out. The address he gave me was about 20 minutes away, deeper into the older part of Brookdale. The neighborhood was not great. The houses were smaller, yards overgrown, some windows boarded up. I slowed down as I found the right address. The house was a single-story pale green with paint peeling off the siding. There was no car in the driveway. I parked on the curb and texted, "Hey, I'm outside." He replied instantly, "Great, come in." Side doors open. I stepped out of the car and approached the side of the house, passing the front door. The side door was slightly ajar. I knocked gently. "Hello?" No answer. I pushed the door open. It creaked loudly. Inside, the air was stale. The house looked even worse from the inside. Dusty, cluttered, dim. A few pieces of broken furniture, yellowed curtains. The only light came from a flickering lamp near the corner. "Mark?" I called out. Nothing. Then I noticed the basement door. It was wide open. The stairs led down into darkness. My phone buzzed. "Mark." "He's in the basement. Go ahead and head down." "He's probably playing." I stared at the screen. My gut tightened. I texted back, "Are you down there?" His reply was instant. "Not yet, just go on. He might be shy." I stood there frozen. Why would a 5-year-old be in a dark basement alone? Why didn't Mark meet me at the door? Where was the kid's room? Where was any sign that a child even lived here? I texted again, "Can you come up first?" No reply. Instead, I got another message. "Don't waste time, just go down." I took a step back from the basement door. My instincts were screaming now. My pulse was racing. Then another message came. "Emily, go downstairs, now." I didn't respond. I turned and started walking back to the side door. From behind me, I heard something shift. A slow, deliberate creak of a step on wood. Someone was coming up the basement stairs. I didn't wait. I ran. Out the side door, across the yard, slammed my car door shut, locked it, started the engine and peeled off so fast my tires screeched. Only when I was 2 blocks away did I stop at a red light, hands shaking, breathing hard. My phone buzzed again. I looked down. You shouldn't have left. There was never a kid. Name's not Mark either. I don't even live here. Don't bother reporting anything." I froze. Cold spread through my whole body. I felt sick. When I got home, I told my parents everything. My dad called the police immediately. I gave them the address, showed the texts, explained everything. Later that week, we found out the Morgans did know someone named Mark, but barely. He'd rented the house across from them for a few months. Never had a kid. They'd barely spoken to him. Police investigated the house I'd been in. It was foreclosed and empty. Squatters had broken in and out of it multiple times in the last year. No permanent resident, no Mark, no Caleb. But the basement? There were ropes tied to an old metal chair down there, and a single flashlight. Still on. To this day, I don't know how he recognized me, or how close I really came to never walking back out of that house. I never babysat again after that, and I never ignore my instincts anymore. It started with a text. I was 19, fresh out of high school, and still figuring out if I wanted to go to college or not. I'd just quit my job at a local frozen yogurt place because the owner kept scheduling me for 12-hour shifts with no breaks. I didn't really have a plan, just bills and time. My mom's friend Dana texted me out of nowhere one Thursday morning asking if I was free to babysit her cousin's kids that night. She said they lived in Pine Hill, a neighborhood about 20 minutes from me. It was decent. Quiet, older houses, some big oaks lining the sidewalks. I had nothing else going on and needed gas money, so I said yes. She gave me the parents' names, Rachel and Marcus Dwyer, and told me they had 2 kids, Elijah, 5, and Sophie, 3. Dana mentioned that she'd babysat for them a few times herself and said they were super chill. That night was supposed to be easy. 4 hours. Feed the kids, put them to bed, hang out until the parents came home. I brought a hoodie, some snacks, and a book. I didn't expect anything strange, but by the end of the night, I'd be locked in an upstairs bedroom with both kids, hiding, heart pounding, hoping the footsteps outside the door would go away. I got to the house around 5:30 p.m. It was a 2-story place on a quiet cul-de-sac. Well-kept lawn, wind chimes on the porch, the kind of place that felt safe. Rachel answered the door with a tired smile and Sophie clinging to her leg like a baby koala. Elijah was on the living room floor with a pile of toy cars. "Hey, you must be Izzy, right?" Rachel said. "Yeah," I nodded. "Nice to meet you." She let me in and called for Marcus, who came out buttoning up his shirt. They both looked like they'd had a long week. Rachel had her makeup done but still looked stressed, and Marcus looked like he'd just gotten off a shift at a warehouse or something. "We'll just be out for dinner and drinks," Marcus said, grabbing his wallet. "Probably back around 10:30. Rachel crouched down to kiss both kids goodbye. "Be good, okay? Listen to Izzy." "Can we have nuggets tonight?" Elijah asked, already angling for a deal. Rachel smiled. "If Izzy says yes." They gave me emergency numbers, the Wi-Fi password, showed me where snacks were, then left in a cloud of perfume and the sound of heels on the front porch. As soon as the door shut, the house felt different. Not bad, just quieter. Dinner was fine. We made chicken nuggets and apple slices. Elijah asked me about 10 times if I had a boyfriend. Sophie mostly watched Bluey and picked at her food. By 8 o'clock, I started the bedtime routine. Sophie was clearly ready, yawning, rubbing her eyes, dragging her blanket behind her like a cape. Elijah, not so much. He bounced around, still full of questions and energy. "Why do you have a tattoo? What does it say? Do you know how to sword fight?" I helped them brush their teeth, read 2 stories in Elijah's room, which was covered in dinosaur posters, and tucked them both in. I checked the baby monitor Rachel had left on the kitchen counter, then sat on the couch, scrolled my phone for a bit, and finally opened my book. Then, maybe 15 minutes later, I heard it, the back door creaking open. At first, I didn't panic. I figured maybe the wind pushed it or one of the kids got up. I walked toward the kitchen slowly, the floor creaking under my socks. The back door was wide open. My first instinct was annoyance. I figured Elijah had probably gotten up and wanted to sneak out and look at the stars or something. It wouldn't be the first time a kid had done something like that. "Elijah?" I called. Nothing. I turned around and he was standing behind me in the hallway. I jumped. "Jesus, don't sneak up on me like that." He stared at the open door. "I just opened it a little," he said softly. I let the man in. My stomach flipped. "What man?" I asked carefully. "The man by the trees." "Elijah, there's no one out there," I said, walking past him to shut the door. The porch light flickered on, motion sensor, but no one was visible outside. I locked it and turned around. "Elijah," I said, crouching down. "What did you mean by that?" He hesitated, looking down at his bare feet. He knocked on the window and said he needed to come in. "What window?" He pointed vaguely toward the living room. "I just opened the door a little," he repeated. He was really tall. I felt that creeping chill, the kind that slides up your spine, slow and sharp. I walked through the house. The front door was locked. All the windows seemed closed. I called out just in case. "Hello? Is someone there?" Silence. I turned every light on, every room, every hallway. Still nothing. Maybe Elijah was making it up. Or he had a dream. Or maybe some neighborhood teen was pulling a prank tapping on windows. But something felt wrong. I walked back upstairs past Sophie's room. She was asleep, curled into a little ball, and into Elijah's room. "Elijah?" I asked, keeping my voice calm. "Where did the man go?" He pointed down the hallway. "He went into the living room." I froze. "You saw him come inside?" He nodded. "I think he's hiding." My brain started to panic, but I didn't want to scare the kids. I told Elijah to get into bed and stay there. I whispered that I'd be right back. Then I did something stupid. I went back downstairs to check again. Alone. The house was dead quiet. I moved slowly, checking closets, the laundry room, even under the table. There was nothing, but I still felt watched. As I turned toward the stairs, I heard it. A soft creak from the other side of the house. A hallway near the guest bathroom. I didn't even wait. I sprinted up the stairs 2 at a time and shut myself in Elijah's room. He sat up. "Is the man back?" "I don't know," I whispered. I went into Sophie's room and picked her up. She was half awake, confused but quiet, and brought her back to Elijah's room. I shut the door and sat in front of it, phone in my hand. I called 911. I told the dispatcher everything. What Elijah said, the sound downstairs, the open door. I gave them the address. She stayed on the line with me. And then, I heard it. Footsteps on the stairs. Slow, deliberate. One step, then another. They got to the landing and stopped. The handle on the bedroom door jiggled. I didn't breathe. "Elijah," I whispered, "go sit with Sophie. Don't make a sound." The doorknob turned slightly, then stopped, and then silence. The footsteps retreated, slower this time. I waited, gripping my phone so hard my knuckles hurt. Then, a knock at the front door. The police. By the time they entered, whoever had been inside was long gone. The back door was unlocked again. One of the officers found faint, muddy footprints on the back patio, adult-sized, headed into the house but not out. We never found out who it was. He must have slipped out through the garage or side yard the second he heard the sirens. The kids were safe. The Dwyers came home crying and apologizing. Marcus installed cameras the next day. I babysat once more for them, 6 months later, during the daytime. But I never stayed the night again. Elijah doesn't talk about it, not even when I asked him again later. Maybe he blocked it out. But I still remember his voice, quiet and matter of fact. I let the man in. I was 19 when I picked up babysitting again. I had just finished my first semester at a small community college in Elkhart, Indiana, and was desperate for a little extra cash. Rent wasn't cheap, even for my half of a shared apartment, and the part-time job I had at the campus bookstore barely covered gas and groceries. I remembered how I used to babysit in high school for neighbors and my mom's co-workers. It was easy money and I liked kids. So I thought, why not try it again? But this time, instead of relying on word of mouth, I made a few printed flyers. Not the digital kind, actual paper cards with little pull-off tabs at the bottom with my number. I stuck them up on the corkboards at a couple local grocery stores and one laundromat, the kind of places you figure someone might look when they're in a bind and need a sitter fast. 2 days later, I got a call. The woman on the other end introduced herself as Melissa. Her voice was tired but polite, and she said she was a nurse picking up extra shifts at the hospital downtown. She explained she was a single mom to a 6-year-old boy named Mason and needed someone to watch him for a few hours the next evening while she worked a short overnight. Said she'd be home by around 2 a.m. "I know it's late notice," she said, "but I'll pay you what your flyer says. Even a little more if you're willing to stay late." I hesitated. The idea of babysitting that late made me a little uneasy, especially since I hadn't met her or her kid. But money was money, and she sounded genuine. I agreed. "Perfect," she said. "I'll text you the address. Just be there by 7:30. Mason should already be in his pajamas by then, but he might want a snack or to watch TV before bed." We hung up and I tried to brush away the weird feeling in my gut. The next evening, I arrived at the house. It was further out than I expected, on the edge of town near a wooded area. The neighborhood wasn't run down, just quiet. The kind of quiet that makes you roll your windows up on the drive in. The house was a 2-story rental, kind of narrow, pale gray siding with black shutters. A small porch light glowed near the door. I parked out front and sat in my car for a moment, staring at the house. I was early, about 7:20. I texted Melissa to let her know I was outside. She responded a minute later. "Come on in, door's open. Just shut it behind you. I had to leave a little early. Sorry." That set off a flicker of concern. She wasn't home. No in-person introduction, no rundown of rules or allergies or anything. Still, I figured maybe nurses really did get called in suddenly. Maybe her kid was already asleep. Maybe I was overthinking it. I stepped inside. The house was mostly dark except for a dim kitchen light. It smelled faintly of wood and something sour, like milk left out too long. The living room had a sagging couch, a small flat-screen TV, and a coffee table with crayon marks. There were a few toys in a bin in the corner. "Hello?" I called out softly. "Mason?" No answer. I closed the door behind me and locked it out of habit. I walked further in, checking the kitchen and peeking down the hallway that led toward what I assumed were the bedrooms. One door was slightly ajar. I knocked gently. "Hey, Mason." "I'm Jenna. Your mom asked me to come hang out with you tonight." Still nothing. I pushed the door open a little more and peeked inside. The room was dark, but I could make out the outline of a twin bed, some toys on the floor. The sheets were messy, like someone had just gotten out of bed, but the bed was empty. I turned on the hallway light and opened the other doors. Bathroom, closet, a small guest room. No sign of a kid. That prickling unease started to climb up my spine. I texted Melissa again. "Hey, I'm here. I don't see Mason anywhere. Did he fall asleep somewhere else?" No reply. I waited. 5 minutes passed. 10. I walked back to the front of the house and froze. The door I had locked was cracked open. I know I locked it. My heart thumped hard in my chest. I grabbed my phone again and texted Melissa one more time. "Your front door was open. I swear I locked it. Is everything okay?" No response. I hovered near the living room, trying to stay calm. Maybe Mason had wandered outside. Maybe he left when the door was unlocked. Should I call the police? Suddenly, I heard a soft creak from upstairs. But I had already checked up there. "Mason?" I called again, this time more cautiously. No answer. I crept toward the staircase. Each step felt heavier than the last. I reached the top and noticed that the door at the end of the hall, which I could swear had been closed, was now slightly open. I approached slowly, pushed it open. The room was nearly empty, just a mattress on the floor. No furniture, no kid. Then I noticed something on the far wall, deep gouges like someone had clawed at the paint, and below them, a small pile of broken crayon bits. Suddenly, I heard the soft click of the front door closing downstairs. I turned so fast I nearly tripped. I bolted down the stairs and into the living room, and froze. There was a man standing near the door. He wore dark clothes, a gray beanie pulled low, and his hands were in his pockets. I couldn't see his face clearly, but his build was stocky. Too big to be someone I should be alone in a house with. "Who are you?" I asked, my voice shaking. He didn't answer. "Where's Melissa?" I demanded. Still nothing. Then he said, in a calm, even voice, "There's no Melissa." My breath caught in my throat. "Who are you?" Instead of replying, he started walking toward me. I turned and ran, straight out the back door. I didn't even think about grabbing my phone, I just ran. Through the yard, past an old shed, into the woods. Branches scratched my arms, my legs. I didn't stop until I was sure I'd put distance between us. I crouched behind a fallen tree, gasping for air, trying to stay quiet. That's when I heard it, his voice. Distant, but getting closer. "You shouldn't have come here." I covered my mouth with both hands and stayed perfectly still. Eventually, I heard his footsteps retreat. I waited another 10 minutes in silence before creeping out, making a wide circle back toward the road. I ran until I found a lit gas station and called the police from inside. When they searched the house, it was empty. No child's belongings, no signs anyone had lived there long term. The number Melissa used had been disconnected. The house, it turned out, had recently gone up for sale. No one was living in it. The owners had moved out weeks earlier. They never found the man. I gave them my flyer, hoping they could trace something, but nothing ever came of it. I never babysat again after that. And I still think about the room upstairs, how it looked like a child had been kept there for a long time. Maybe not recently, but someone had been in that house before me. And I don't think I was the first girl to answer an ad. I started babysitting when I was 17, mostly for neighbors around my town of Elk Ridge, Missouri. It wasn't a big town, just a handful of neighborhoods tucked between wooded back roads and the occasional farm stretch. My family knew almost everyone, so word got around fast when someone's kid needed watching. I didn't mind. I liked kids and I liked the quiet. I was saving up to buy a used car, and babysitting helped. Plus, I had plans to start community college in the fall and didn't want to ask my parents for help. That summer was my busiest. I had 2 regular families and a few one-offs. One of them stuck with me, though, not for the pay or the kids, but because of something that happened that I still can't explain. This was back in 2013, give or take. It was mid-June, hot during the day, but still chilly once the sun dropped. My Aunt Dina called me one afternoon and asked if I could watch her kids while she and Uncle Rick drove to a wedding about an hour away. They'd be back around midnight. Dina lived about 20 minutes outside town, on the far edge of a rural road called Knox Hollow. Her house sat on a few acres, decent lawn, wide gravel driveway, woods on 3 sides, and a rusted metal gate that hadn't worked since I was 10. She had 4 kids. The oldest, Mason, was 9. Then there was Ellie, 7, Grace, 5, and the youngest, Emmy, who had just turned 4. I'd watched them plenty of times before, and while they were wild, they weren't bad kids. I pulled up a little after 3:30 p.m., parking behind their minivan. Rick was loading their overnight bag into the trunk, while Dina gave me a list of phone numbers and bedtime rules. It was the usual: no sugar after 7, cartoons only until 8. Grace's stuffed bunny must be in her bed or there would be hell to pay. She even laughed as she said that. By 4 p.m., they were gone. The kids exploded into chaos almost instantly. "Let's go outside," Mason yelled, already halfway through the back door. "Trampoline," Ellie squealed. I grabbed a bottle of water and followed them out. The backyard was huge, open, and backed by thick woods. They had a trampoline, a rusted swing set, a sandbox that doubled as a litter box for stray cats, and a half-deflated kiddie pool that I told them to stay away from. The sun was bright, the sky clean. For a while, it was actually kind of peaceful. I pushed the girls on the swings, played tag with Mason, and even let them eat popsicles on the back steps. Around 6:30, I called everyone in for dinner, just frozen pizza and applesauce, but they didn't complain. After dinner, we all ended up back outside for a bit. It was that weird twilight time. Blue light, long shadows, cooler air. I was sitting on the steps again, just watching them bounce on the trampoline, when I noticed something. There was a man at the edge of the woods. I almost didn't register him at first. He wasn't moving, just standing near one of the trees, half concealed by the trunk. He was far, maybe 50 yards out, just barely on the edge of the yard before the woods swallowed everything up. My stomach dropped. I stared for a few seconds, squinting to make sure I wasn't seeing things. He was tall, maybe 6 feet or more, wearing dark clothes and a baseball cap pulled low. His arms hung by his sides. He wasn't waving, wasn't calling out. Just watching. "Mason," I called, standing up quickly. "Everybody off the trampoline. We're going inside now." "Why?" Grace whined, bouncing midair. "No arguments, now let's go." Maybe it was my tone, or maybe they could sense I was serious. They climbed down without much fuss. I kept looking back toward the tree, but the man didn't move. He didn't try to hide either. Once we were all inside, I locked the back door and pulled the curtains shut. The kids scattered. Mason went to the living room, Ellie and Grace went upstairs to play school, and Emmy was on the couch with a blanket and her thumb in her mouth. I checked the other windows in the back. He was gone. No trace, no sound, just empty yard and thick trees behind it. I didn't call the police, I probably should have, but part of me thought maybe it was just a neighbor passing through or a hunter. It was rural after all. I tried to convince myself of that, even though I knew it wasn't normal. By 8:30, I had the kids in pajamas. Grace was already nodding off with her bunny in hand, and Emmy was practically asleep on my shoulder as I carried her upstairs. On the way to Emmy's room, we passed the hallway window that overlooked the front yard. I froze. The man was there, walking slowly down the road in front of the house. He wasn't on the property anymore, just strolling along the gravel shoulder like someone out for a late walk. He didn't look up, didn't pause, just walked. I stood there until he passed out of view, Emmy breathing softly against my chest. I tucked her in and made sure the front door was locked. The house was dead quiet by 9 p.m. Tried to relax, sitting on the couch with the TV on low. Every creak, every pop of the settling house made me jump. Around 9:45, there was a knock at the door. I didn't move at first. It was so soft I thought I imagined it. Then it came again, louder. I got up and peeked through the peephole. It was him. Same dark clothes, same cap. Standing there like he'd been invited. No expression on his face. Just waiting. I backed away from the door and grabbed the cordless phone. My fingers trembled as I dialed Dina's number, but it went to voicemail. I tried Rick. Same thing. "Mason," I whispered, knocking on his door. "I need you to come here." He opened it, blinking. "What's wrong?" "Do you know the guy at the door? Is he a neighbor?" Mason peered around the corner, then shook his head slowly. "I've never seen him before." That confirmed it. I told him to stay upstairs and keep the girls in their rooms no matter what. He nodded, eyes wide, and ran back up. The knocking continued, then stopped. I waited 10 minutes before checking again. The man was gone, but not gone far. He was in the backyard now, near the tree line. Same place he'd been before. Just standing. I didn't sleep that night. I stayed by the front window, porch light on, phone in hand. I kept the TV muted, listening for any sound out of place. The man never came back to the door. I didn't see him leave. Dina and Rick came home a little after midnight. I told them everything. Rick grabbed a flashlight and walked the yard but didn't find anyone. No footprints, no tire tracks, just quiet woods. They offered to let me stay the night, but I wanted to go home. I was too wired, too unsettled. I drove home with my doors locked and my high beams on. They never saw the man again. Neither did I. But I don't take rural babysitting jobs anymore. Not because I'm scared of the woods or the dark or even being alone, but because sometimes you see something, or someone, that doesn't make sense, and they remind you just how vulnerable you really are when no one else is around. And that feeling, that never quite leaves you. It was the easiest money I thought I'd ever make. Back then I was 17, still in high school, and like most girls my age in a small Midwestern town, I babysat to earn extra cash. I wasn't the most outgoing kid, but I was good with children, calm, responsible, and quick on my feet. Parents loved that about me. This story happened the fall before my senior year, in a town called Pine Hollow, not much more than a cluster of neighborhoods with a few grocery stores, one school, and more cornfields than people. It was the kind of place where folks didn't lock their doors until the news told them otherwise. My mom's coworker, Denise Harper, asked if I could watch her 2 kids one Friday night. I'd babysat for her once before, earlier that summer. The kids, Cameron and Lily, were 7 and 8. Smart, polite, easy. They liked Legos and cartoons and would listen if you told them to brush their teeth. The Harpers lived in a 2-story house at the end of a cul-de-sac on Birchwood Drive. A quiet neighborhood. Lots of retirees. Nothing ever happened there. So I said, yes. 5:15 p.m. Denise and her husband Greg were running late. When I pulled up, Denise was still curling her hair in the upstairs bathroom, and Greg was pacing near the front door, checking his phone. "Hey, sweetheart. Thank you so much for doing this," Denise called from upstairs. "Pizza money's on the counter. The kids can stay up until 10. They already had their showers, should be easy." Greg gave me the quick tour again, where the emergency contacts were, how to use the remote, which neighbor to call if anything weird happened. I didn't think I'd need any of it. Cameron and Lily were already in their pajamas when I arrived, which was a little odd, but whatever. They were sitting on the floor in the living room, sorting through a mountain of Legos. "Bye, kiddos. Be good for Tessa," Denise said as they left. The door shut behind them. It was just the 3 of us now. 6:20 p.m. We ordered pizza. I let the kids each pick a movie. They chose Kung Fu Panda, which I had already seen about 10 times thanks to various babysitting gigs, but I didn't complain. I texted my mom to let her know I got there safe and everything was fine. She texted back a thumbs up and a heart. The kids were calm, even cuddly. By the time the movie ended, Cameron had started nodding off with his head on the couch arm, and Lily had moved to the floor with a coloring book. I asked if they wanted to go upstairs, and they both agreed. Their bedrooms were across from each other on the 2nd floor. Each had their own nightlight, and their rooms were decked out in themes. Lily's was butterflies and soft pink walls. Cameron's was dinosaurs and navy blue. I helped them brush their teeth, tucked them in, and shut their doors partway. 8:05 p.m. I called my best friend Paige, like I always did when I was babysitting. I sat on the couch in the living room with the TV muted and talked with her for a while. Nothing serious, just school gossip and weekend plans. About 15 minutes into our call, I heard something outside. A noise. Not loud, just odd. A sort of scraping sound, like something dragging along the concrete patio behind the house. I paused mid-sentence. "What's wrong?" Paige asked. "Hang on," I said, holding the phone away. I stood up and walked slowly into the kitchen, which looked out onto the backyard. The sliding glass door had vertical blinds which were mostly closed, but I could peek through them. There was someone standing outside. Not just standing, leaning, watching. I stepped back, startled, heart pounding. "Oh my God," I whispered. I went back into the living room, shut off the lamp, and crouched beside the couch. Paige was still on the line. "There's someone in the backyard," I said, trying to keep my voice down. "What? Are you serious?" "Yeah. He was right by the window. Call 911. I don't want to freak out the kids. Maybe it's nothing." Right then, I heard something. Not from outside. From inside. A loud, unmistakable crack of glass breaking. I hung up on Paige and bolted upstairs. 8:30 p.m. I didn't even knock. I ran into Lily's room first, flicked on the light. "Get up. Now don't ask questions." She blinked, confused. "What's wrong?" "Just get up." Then I rushed into Cameron's room and did the same. The adrenaline was already pumping. I could feel my hands shaking, but I didn't want the kids to see it. I grabbed both of their hands and pulled them down the hallway to the master bedroom. It was the only room upstairs with a lock on the door. I shut and locked it behind us. "There's someone in the house," I said quietly. Cameron started crying. Lily's eyes widened, but she didn't speak. "There's a phone in here," I whispered, moving to the dresser. I found the cordless landline and called 911. The dispatcher's voice was calm. She asked for the address and if we were safe. I told her someone broke in through the back and that we were upstairs locked in a room. She told me to stay on the line and that officers were already on the way. 5 minutes, she said, maybe less. The kids were huddled on the bed behind me. I could hear Cameron sniffling. I crouched down next to them and whispered, "It's going to be okay. The police are coming. Just stay quiet." Below us, I heard footsteps. Not running, not stomping, just slow and deliberate. The sound of a drawer being opened, something being moved. The clink of what sounded like a lamp falling. Whoever was in the house wasn't in a rush. They thought no one was home. I didn't dare speak. Those 5 minutes stretched into what felt like an eternity. Then, the faint sound of a door opening downstairs. A voice. "Sheriff's Department, if anyone's in here, come out with your hands up." I nearly collapsed from relief. I unlocked the door, but didn't open it right away. I shouted, "We're upstairs, we're okay." A deputy's voice answered, "Stay where you are, ma'am, we'll come get you." 9 p.m. The man was still inside when they found him. He was in the dining room, stuffing silverware and watches into a backpack. A crowbar lay near the broken window. He never made it upstairs. They said he was a known burglar, out on bail from another case. He didn't have a weapon, thank God, just the crowbar. But that was enough. The Harpers rushed home when they got the call. Denise hugged her kids so tight I thought they might suffocate. She kept saying, "I'm so sorry, I'm so sorry." I didn't cry until later, when I was back home, in my room, with the door locked and the hallway light on. I didn't babysit again for 6 months. Every time the wind rattled a window or a shadow moved outside, I froze. I even started sleeping with a baseball bat under my bed for a while. It sounds dramatic, but when you've seen someone standing outside a glass door while 2 kids sleep upstairs, you don't shake it off easily. Eventually, I got over it. Sort of. I mean, I still double-check the locks before bed. Still don't like being home alone at night. But I did go back to babysitting, carefully. Only for families I knew well, only in neighborhoods I trusted, and always with a phone charged and within reach. It was supposed to be an easy night, but it taught me something. Safety can be an illusion, and sometimes the scariest thing isn't what you imagine in your head. It's what's already standing right outside the window. I wasn't even supposed to be babysitting that night. It was a last-minute call, one of those, "Hey, can you please help me out, I'm stuck" kind of situations. It was late March, 5 years ago. I was 19, a college freshman back home in Kenmore, Ohio for spring break. I'd been planning to stay in, eat leftovers, and maybe rewatch Stranger Things or something mindless on Netflix. Instead, Around 5 p.m., my cousin Janelle called in a panic. She and her husband Mark had theater tickets in Cleveland they'd bought months ago, but their usual babysitter had come down with the flu. She needed someone to watch their 2 kids, Owen, who was 7 at the time, and Lena, who had just turned 5. I liked those kids. They weren't hyper or clingy, and they always listened. It sounded easy enough, so I told her I'd be there by 6. Her house was in a quiet subdivision on the edge of town, just a bunch of wide cul-de-sacs, ranch homes, and maple trees. It felt safe, which is probably why I didn't think twice about what was going to happen. 6:10 p.m. Janelle gave me a quick rundown. Dinner in the fridge, bedtime by 9, emergency numbers on the whiteboard. She kissed the kids goodbye, and within 10 minutes it was just me, Owen, and Lena. The evening went smoothly. The kids had grilled cheese and tomato soup. Then we all played Uno on the floor of the den. Around 7:30, we started watching Moana on Disney+. Lena dozed off halfway through, and Owen finished the movie quietly without saying much. He was always the more serious one, a little sensitive. By 8:50, I helped them both brush their teeth and tucked them into their separate bedrooms. Owen's room overlooked the backyard. Janelle's house backed up against a thick row of trees and a sloping hill, so there weren't any neighbors behind them, just woods and a narrow walking trail. 9:10 p.m. I was finally in the living room, curled up on the couch, scrolling through my phone and half watching some cooking show on the Food Network. Then I heard soft footsteps. I looked up, and there was Owen standing at the edge of the hallway. His eyes looked a little wide. "Hey, buddy," I said softly. "Everything okay?" He nodded at first, then hesitated. "I think I saw a man in the backyard." That made me sit up straight. "Where?" "By my window," he whispered. "Just walking." I tried not to look alarmed. "Did you see his face?" "No, just..." His shirt looked dark, and his shoes made this weird sound, like crunchy. That sent a quiet chill down my back. The backyard was gravel and patchy grass. If someone was walking there, it would crunch. Still, I didn't want to panic him. "Okay," I said gently. "Let's go look together." We went into his room side by side. The room was dim. Only his nightlight glowed in the corner, and I peeked through the blinds. The backyard looked empty. Dark trees, a swaying fence, the faint outline of the shed. "Looks fine to me," I said, though I kept my voice quiet. "But you did the right thing telling me." "Are you going to stay here?" he asked. "Just for a little bit?" "Sure," I said, pulling up his desk chair and sitting near the window. "You can go back to bed, and I'll keep watch." He smiled faintly and climbed under the covers. Within a few minutes, his breathing evened out. 9:45 p.m. I went back to the living room but stayed alert. The window there had a decent view of the backyard's edge, so I sat where I could watch both my phone and the outside. And that's when I saw him. A shadow, tall, slow-moving, slipped past the far corner of the backyard near the side gate. The motion sensor light didn't flick on, so I could only make out the silhouette. I froze. Was that a neighbor? A hiker? Or someone trying to stay unseen? I moved quietly toward the window, pressing my face to the glass. But the man was gone. Just vanished into the dark. I felt the knot in my stomach tighten. This wasn't nothing. I picked up Janelle's landline. Yes, they still had one. But I paused before dialing. Was I overreacting? Should I really call the police? Then I remembered Owen's words. His shoes made a weird sound. That meant the man had been close. Right under the window. I set the phone down, waited, watched. 10:05 p.m. ding-dong. The doorbell rang. I jumped like I'd been shocked. Who the hell rings a doorbell this late? The porch light flicked on automatically, and I tiptoed toward the front window and peeked through the curtain. It was him. The same figure, tall, broad-shouldered, wearing a dark hoodie and jeans, face half in shadow. He stood on the front step, completely still, like he was waiting. I didn't move. I didn't say anything. I didn't even breathe. Then, as if sensing me, he stepped closer and knocked on the door. Knock, knock, knock. 3 deliberate raps. I grabbed my phone and backed away into the kitchen. My hands were shaking as I dialed Janelle. She didn't answer. I whispered to myself, "Okay, just call 911. Then I heard his voice through the front door. "Hey, I'm sorry to bother you," he said calmly. "My car broke down. I just need to use a phone. Please?" His tone was even, polite. Maybe too polite. "I saw your lights on. I know someone's in there." That did it. I slammed the deadbolt shut even tighter and yelled, "I've already called the cops." Silence. I crept back to the living room window and saw him backing off the porch, looking around. Then he walked, not ran, walked down the street. Disappeared past the neighbor's mailbox and into the night. 10:30 p.m. When Janelle and Mark came home, I was still on edge, pacing the house. I told them everything. Mark immediately stepped out and checked the yard, the gate, even the back of the property. No sign of anyone. We called the police together. I gave a report, described the man, what he said, what he looked like. An officer came by, took my statement, said they'd patrol the area overnight. Nothing ever came of it. A week later, Janelle texted me. "Just wanted to say thanks again for being so calm. We added cameras out back just in case. Kids are okay now, though Owen still doesn't like sleeping with the blinds open." I still think about that night more than I probably should. Who was he? Why was he walking in the backyard? And what would have happened if I'd opened that door? There's one thing I do know. Next time someone says they just need to use a phone, I'm not answering. It was supposed to be an easy couple of days. No drama, no trouble. Just me, 2 4-year-olds, and a lot of goldfish crackers. It was the first week of July, summer break, and I had just come back home from my sophomore year of college. My older sister, Hannah, had called me a week prior asking if I'd be willing to watch her twin boys, Mason and Oliver, while she and her husband, Ethan, went out of town for a wedding in Vermont. They'd be gone 4 days, Thursday morning to Sunday night, and since I was home for break and not doing much besides sleeping in and binging shows, I said yes. I'd always gotten along with the twins. They were wild, sure, typical little boys with boundless energy and zero fear. But they loved me. And honestly, I kind of loved the chaos. I'd babysat them plenty of times before, but always just for an evening or a single overnight. This would be the first time I'd be fully in charge. No backup. No one else in the house. Their place was in a suburb outside of Portland, Maine. Quiet, green, and incredibly normal. The kind of place where people leave their garage doors open during the day. The house itself was 2 stories, kitchen and living room downstairs, all the bedrooms upstairs. The boys shared a room across the hall from the master bedroom. I'd be sleeping in the guest room next to the bathroom. I spent the day before they left getting the rundown from Hannah. Bedtimes, snacks, emergency numbers, where the Tylenol was, which sippy cups the boys liked best. She kept checking and rechecking lists while I played with Mason and Oliver on the carpet. "You sure you're okay with this, Liv?" she asked as she loaded the car. "I mean it. If anything feels off, call me. Or Ethan." "I've got it," I told her with a half smile. "They're just 2 small humans. What's the worst that can happen?" She laughed, kissed the boys goodbye, and they were gone. Cunt. The first day went by fast. We made macaroni and cheese for lunch, watched Finding Nemo twice, and spent the evening drawing monsters on the driveway with sidewalk chalk. The twins were full of energy but good listeners. Around 8:30 p.m., I gave them a bath, brushed their teeth, and read them Goodnight Moon. By 9, they were tucked in, and I was downstairs on the couch, scrolling through Instagram and eating popcorn straight out of the bag. Around 11:15, I paused the show I was watching because I thought I heard something upstairs. A thump. Nothing crazy. Maybe a toy fell. I waited, listening. Nothing. I figured it was just the boys shifting in bed and went back to watching TV. I fell asleep on the couch that night with a bowl of popcorn on my lap and woke up to Mason gently poking my arm around 6 a.m. Auntie Liv. I peed a little. Day 2 had begun. Day 2. This was the real test. No excitement of a new babysitter. No novelty. Just routine. The boys were up early, full of energy as always. We went to a park in the afternoon, got ice cream from a little cart, and came back home covered in dirt and sugar. By the time bedtime rolled around, they were overtired and cranky, fighting me about brushing their teeth and insisting there were monsters under their beds. "You're fine," I told them, flicking on their nightlight. "No monsters. Just blankets and dreams." "Can you stay upstairs until we're asleep?" Oliver asked. "Just for a little?" "Of course," I said, sitting outside their door and listening to them whisper back and forth until the room finally went silent. I must have dozed off in the hallway because I woke up maybe 30 minutes later with a stiff neck. I got up quietly and headed to the guest room to finally sleep. Around 12:30 a.m. I was woken up again by a sound. Not a toy falling, not footsteps. This was something different. It sounded like the soft creak of a door. I sat up slowly, trying to listen. Creak. Then silence. I glanced at the digital clock next to the bed. 12:34 a.m. I got out of bed and peeked into the hallway. Everything looked normal. The twins' door was shut. Hannah and Ethan's room was also closed, just as it had been when they left. Maybe the AC had kicked on weird. Maybe I was imagining things, but something didn't feel right. I tiptoed down the hallway and checked the boys. Both were fast asleep, curled up in their blankets. Their soft breathing was steady. I started back toward the guest room. That's when I heard it, a quiet thud, from the master bedroom. It stopped me cold. I stared at the door. It was still shut. I hadn't been in there since the day before. Why would I? I stood there, frozen, staring at the knob. Then, another thump, like someone had dropped something heavy. And I ran. Not downstairs, not out the front door. My instincts kicked in and I went straight into the twins' room and shut the door behind me. I locked it, heart pounding. The twins stirred a little but didn't wake. I didn't even realize I was shaking until I tried to dial 911 and nearly dropped my phone. 911, what's your emergency? A calm female voice answered. I whispered, someone's in the house. I think they're in the master bedroom. I'm here babysitting my nephews. I locked us in their room. Okay, ma'am, what's your name? Olivia Carter. Please hurry. She kept me on the line, asking questions, address, description if I had any, if I'd heard a voice, if the intruder had seen me. No, I don't think they know I'm in here, I whispered. They were in the master bedroom. I think I heard them drop something. Wait. Footsteps, heavy, slow, coming up the stairs. I stopped breathing. They walked straight past the twins' door, then circled back, and stopped right outside the room. The knob twisted. Once, twice. It didn't open thanks to the lock. I clutched the phone tighter. They're at the door, I whispered. They're trying to get in. Stay quiet, the dispatcher said. Police are 2 minutes away. Do not make any noise. The person didn't knock, didn't say anything, just stood there, and then walked away. I waited, silent. Then I heard the unmistakable sound of the front door creaking open. Then the distant blare of sirens. Police. They arrived fast. I could hear the shuffle of boots and calls of "clear" through the house. I didn't unlock the door until an officer knocked gently and identified himself. It's safe now, Miss Carter. You can come out. The man they found had come in through an unlocked basement window. He was wearing gloves. He didn't take anything. He didn't try to leave until he heard sirens. He didn't say a word the whole time they arrested him. Later, we found out he lived only 2 blocks away. He had no prior record, no reason, no explanation. Nothing. Just a man, in a stranger's house in the middle of the night. I didn't sleep the rest of that night. I laid on the floor between the twins' beds, listening to their soft breathing, holding their tiny hands, waiting for the sun to rise. I never told Mason and Oliver what happened. They were too young, but they still call me Super Aunt Liv, and part of me wonders if, somehow, they knew something was wrong that night, if they could sense how terrified I was, how real it was. Because it was real. Every step, every creak, every second. It was just a few days, but it changed everything.